The Meiji imperial palace garden stood resplendent in the early June light, pink cherry blossom petals drifting like snow across manicured lawns. Countess Natalie Greyson kept her face carefully composed as she moved through the assembled nobility. Her Western-style dress with its modest bustle distinguished her among the Japanese aristocrats, though after 5 years as a diplomatic attaché's daughter in Tokyo, she navigated court protocols with practiced ease. She paused at the edge of the gathering, allowing herself a moment to breathe before joining the reception line to congratulate the emperor on his marriage alliance. The breeze carried the scent of jasmine and the distant notes of traditional music as servants weaved through the crowd with trays of delicate confections. "You wear your mask well, Countess," came a low voice beside her. "Though your eyes betray you." Lord Nicolas Jameson appeared at her side, his diplomatic uniform immaculate, dark hair swept neatly beneath his formal hat. As the British ambassador's chief advisor, he had no business addressing her so intimately. Yet 5 years of shared embassy functions had created an understanding between them that defied proper etiquette. "Lord Jameson," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean." "The same thing that brings that particular shade of melancholy to your face whenever you look toward the imperial pavilion." His voice dropped lower. "The same reason you've worn grey to a celebration." Natalie's fingers tightened around her fan. "My attire is perfectly appropriate for my station. And I assure you, I am delighted at His Imperial Majesty's marriage to Princess Mosoko. The alliance with the Ichij family will strengthen the empire." "Indeed." Nicolas studied her profile as she determinedly avoided his gaze. "And yet 3 years ago, when you spent those months translating for the Emperor's Cultural Commission, rumor suggested His Majesty had developed a rather particular interest in Western poetry and its interpreter." Her fan snapped open with unnecessary force. "Rumors are the currency of idle minds, Lord Jameson. You would do well to ignore them. As you have ignored the letters that arrive each month bearing the imperial seal." The fan stilled. "You presume too much." "Do I?" His eyes, dark as chestnuts, held a challenge. "Then perhaps I've also presumed that the Emperor's request for your presence at tonight's private banquet was more than mere courtesy to a foreign diplomat's daughter." Natalie forced herself to resume fanning, the steady rhythm at odds with her quickening pulse. "His Imperial Majesty is now a married man, as propriety and duty demanded. Whatever misunderstandings may have existed are firmly in the past. Then you won't mind if I escort you to the banquet?" It wasn't a question. After all, if there is nothing to hide, being accompanied by a British official should pose no difficulty. Before she could respond, a court official approached and bowed deeply. "Countess Greyson, Lord Jameson. His Imperial Majesty requests your presence for the ceremonial tea." Nicolas offered his arm, his expression unreadable. "Shall we?" With no graceful way to refuse, Natalie placed her hand lightly on his sleeve, conscious of the warmth beneath the stiff fabric. "You play a dangerous game, Lord Jameson." "No more dangerous than the one you've been playing for 3 years, he murmured as they moved toward the pavilion. "Some might even call it treason." Her step faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Then it's fortunate I have nothing to hide." The tea ceremony unfolded with meticulous precision, every movement laden with centuries of tradition. Seated according to rank, Natalie found herself positioned with a clear view of Emperor Meiji and his new bride. The Emperor's face remained impassive throughout, his eyes only briefly meeting hers when she offered the traditional congratulations in flawless Japanese. In that momentary connection, memories rushed unbidden of quiet afternoons in the Imperial Library, discussions of Wordsworth and Shelley, hands accidentally brushing over open books, and promises whispered beneath cherry trees that could never be kept. Later, as musicians performed and courtiers circulated, Natalie slipped away to a secluded corner of the garden. The paper lantern's glow barely reached the stone bench beside a small ornamental pond, where koi fish moved like ghosts beneath the dark surface. The chrysanthemum blooms even when no one watches. She didn't need to turn to recognize the Emperor's voice, pitched low and void of the formal tones he used in court. Speaking in English, their private language, was dangerous enough. "Your Majesty honors me," she replied stiffly, keeping her gaze fixed on the water. "But you should return to your bride. Mosoko understands duty as well as I do." He remained standing several feet away, imperial guards positioned discreetly beyond the garden's entrance. "As do you, it seems. You look beautiful in mourning colors." "I'm not in mourning." "Aren't you?" His voice held a gentleness that threatened to unravel her composure. "I received your last letter. The one you didn't send." Natalie's head snapped up. "What?" "Found crumpled in your translation of The Tempest. Your father delivered the book as requested, unaware of its additional contents." Heat rushed to her face. That unsent letter had contained everything she could never say aloud: her feelings, her despair at his impending marriage, her decision to return to England. "Your Majesty should not have read private thoughts never intended for your eyes." "Perhaps not." A pause. "Yet having read them, how could I let you leave Japan without speaking the truth?" The distant music changed tempo, signaling the banquet would soon begin. Their time was measured in heartbeats. "The truth changes nothing," Natalie said, her voice barely audible. "You have married for the good of your empire, as was always your destiny. I have my duties to my country. We are both bound by forces greater than ourselves. Is that why you pretend indifference? Why you smile and offer congratulations with dead eyes?" He took a step closer. "Why you wear grey to symbolize the ashes of what might have been? Please." The word escaped as a plea. "Don't make this more painful than it already is." The Emperor reached inside his formal robes and withdrew a small wrapped package. "Before you decide to leave Japan, read this. Not now, when you are alone." Footsteps approached from the garden path. Nicholas Jameson appeared, bowing deeply to the Emperor before his gaze settled on Natalie. "Forgive my interruption, Your Imperial Majesty." The British ambassador was concerned about the Countess's absence. "Lord Jameson." The Emperor effortlessly shifted to his formal demeanor. "I was just discussing diplomatic matters with Countess Greyson. Her knowledge of our culture and language makes her an invaluable liaison." Nicholas's expression revealed nothing, but Natalie sensed his suspicion. "Indeed, Your Majesty. The Countess's talents are widely recognized." "I should return to the celebration," the Emperor said, addressing them both with perfect composure. "Lord Jameson, please escort the Countess back to the reception." With a final meaningful glance at Natalie, he departed, leaving her alone with Nicholas and the small package concealed in the folds of her dress. A diplomatic discussion requires privacy in a darkened garden. Nicholas asked once the Emperor was out of earshot. "Lord Jameson, whatever you're implying, I'm not implying anything." His voice hardened. "I'm stating plainly that you're playing with fire. The Emperor is no longer merely a man with cultural interests. He is the living embodiment of the Japanese state, married to cement alliances that will shape the empire's future. I'm well aware of His Majesty's position." "Are you?" Nicholas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because from where I stand, it appears you've entangled yourself in a situation that could destroy not only your reputation but potentially damage relations between our countries. You overestimate my importance." She attempted to step past him, but he caught her arm. "Natalie." The use of her given name startled her. "I'm not speaking as a diplomat now. I've watched you these past years, seen how you light up in his presence and fade in his absence. Whatever exists between you and the Emperor, it cannot end well. The genuine concern in his eyes was almost harder to bear than his accusations. There is nothing between us now. There never truly was. Then what did he give you just now? His gaze dropped to where her hand pressed against her dress. A translation he wished me to review. The lie came smoothly. Now, shall we return before my absence causes more diplomatic concern? Nicolas offered his arm, skepticism evident in the set of his jaw. For someone with nothing to hide, you've become remarkably adept at deception. The words stung because they contained truth. As they rejoined the celebration, Natalie felt the weight of the Emperor's package against her ribs like a brand. Whatever it contained would have to wait until she returned to the privacy of her quarters at the British Embassy. Hours later, with the embassy quiet and her ladies' maid dismissed for the night, Natalie finally unwrapped the small package. Inside lay a beautifully bound journal and a letter sealed with the Emperor's personal one rather than the official imperial seal. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and unfolded the rice paper covered in the Emperor's distinctive handwriting, English characters formed with the precision of a man who had studied the language intensively. My dearest Natalie, what I could not say in the garden, I entrust to this letter. The journal contains the poems I have written since we first met, words I could share with no other soul. They are yours now, as my heart has been since that first day you corrected my pronunciation of eternities without fear or flattery. You believe I have chosen duty over love. The truth is more complex. The empire requires an imperial marriage, but even in ancient times, the heart was allowed its own dominion. Empress Mosoko understands this arrangement. She brings to our union political advantage and the promise of heirs, but not love. That remains elsewhere, with you, if you will still have it. 3 days from now, I will visit the Kotsura Imperial Villa to observe the harvest moon. The villa's eastern garden pavilion will remain unlocked after midnight. Come if you wish to learn the full truth of what I propose. If you do not come, I will understand and never speak of these matters again. Eternally yours in the spaces between worlds. Natalie read the letter twice more before sinking onto her bed. The implications were clear and dangerous. The Emperor was suggesting an arrangement that, while not uncommon in Japanese imperial history, would scandalize British society and potentially end her father's diplomatic career if discovered. She opened the journal with unsteady hands. Page after page revealed poems in both English and Japanese, some translations of Western works they had discussed, others original compositions. Many spoke of cherry blossoms that fall too soon, of autumn leaves that burn bright before winter claims them, of rivers that flow separately but meet in the distant sea. One entry, dated the day of the imperial wedding, struck her particularly. 2 paths diverged before my feet. One draped in gold, one lined with flowers. Duty commands I walk the first, while my soul yearns toward the second. Can one man travel both roads? The ancient poets say it is so. The chrysanthemum and cherry blossom need not bloom in separate gardens. Sleep eluded her that night as she weighed impossible choices. By morning, she had reached no decision, her mind circling endlessly between desire and duty, between the life she wanted and the principles she had been raised to honor. At breakfast, her father noted her distraction. Are you unwell, Natalie? You've hardly touched your food. Ambassador Greyson, with his silver-streaked hair and perpetually worried expression, had raised her alone since her mother's death 15 years earlier. He had brought her to Japan rather than sending her back to England for finishing school, believing cultural exposure would serve her better than conventional education. She owed him everything. Just tired from last night's festivities, she managed with a smile. The celebration continued quite late. Indeed. He studied her over his teacup. Lord Jameson mentioned you had a private conversation with the Emperor. Her stomach tightened. His Majesty wished to discuss some translations. Nothing of importance. Natalie. Her father set down his cup. I may be primarily concerned with trade agreements and military treaties, but I'm not blind. There have been rumors without substance, she interrupted, more sharply than intended. The Emperor is newly married. Any friendship that might have existed was perfectly proper and is now firmly in the past. The ambassador's expression softened. My dear, I understand the appeal. He's a remarkable man, intelligent, progressive, charming when he wishes to be. But he is not for you, nor you for him. Surely you see that? Of course I do. She pushed her plate away, appetite gone. If you'll excuse me, I have correspondence to attend to. In her study, Natalie tried to focus on translating diplomatic communications, but her mind kept returning to the Emperor's letter. 3 days. 3 days to decide whether to meet him and hear his proposal, or to choose the safer path of distance and eventually departure. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Enter, she called, quickly covering the Emperor's journal with other papers. Nicolas Jameson stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Without preamble, he said, I've been assigned to escort you back to England. We depart in 1 week. The words hit like physical blows. On whose authority? Your father's, with the Foreign Office's approval. His expression was unreadable. He believes your expertise is needed in London. My expertise? She gave a bitter laugh. You mean my removal has been deemed diplomatically expedient? Nicolas took a seat opposite her desk without invitation. Natalie, listen to me carefully. The imperial court is watching you. The Empress's family particularly. Your presence has become a topic of discussion in circles where one does not want to be discussed. Based on nothing but gossip. Is it nothing? He leaned forward. Because the Emperor's gift last night, which was clearly not a translation assignment, suggests otherwise. She stiffened. You had no right to report on my private conversations. I had every duty as a representative of the Crown. Just as you have a duty to consider the implications of your actions. His voice lowered. Whatever he's offered you, and I can guess what arrangement a Japanese emperor might propose to a foreign woman he favors, it can only end in your disgrace. Anger flared, hot and sudden. You presume to know the Emperor's mind? To know my mind. I know that you're being used as a pawn in court politics you don't fully understand. Nicolas's expression softened unexpectedly. And I know that watching you destroy yourself for a man who can never truly be yours would be unbearable. The raw emotion in his voice caught her off guard. Lord Jameson, Nicolas, he corrected quietly. After 5 years, surely we can dispense with formalities when speaking privately. She studied him, the earnest concern in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. For years she had thought of him merely as her father's colleague, occasionally an irritant with his probing questions and dry observations. Now she wondered if she had misread his intentions all along. Why do you care what happens to me? She asked finally. Because he stopped, recalibrated. Because despite our differences, I respect you too much to watch you sacrifice everything for an impossible attachment. Before she could respond, another knock came at the door, followed by her lady's maid announcing that a package had arrived. The courier had indicated it required the Countess's immediate attention. Dismissed, Nicolas rose to leave. At the doorway, he paused. 1 week, Natalie. Whatever decision you're contemplating, remember that in 7 days, we sail for England. The package contained an exquisite folding fan, decorated with painted chrysanthemums, the imperial flower. No note accompanied it, but the message was clear: the emperor was reaffirming his invitation. That night, unable to sleep, Natalie slipped out to the embassy garden. The moon hung low and golden, autumn's approach evident in the cooler night air. She opened the emperor's journal again, reading by moonlight the poems that spoke of impossible choices and enduring devotion. "I thought I might find you here." She startled, closing the journal quickly as Nicolas emerged from the shadows of the garden path. "Do you make a habit of following me, Lord Jameson?" "Only when I'm concerned." He remained standing a respectful distance away. "Another imperial gift arrived today. Your father doesn't know yet. There's nothing improper about a diplomatic courtesy." "A courtesy?" He laughed softly, without humor. "Is that what you tell yourself? That the Emperor of Japan sends personal gifts to all foreign diplomats' daughters?" Natalie rose, clutching the journal to her chest. "What I tell myself is none of your concern. It became my concern when I was assigned to ensure your safe return to England." He took a step closer. "And perhaps it became my concern long before that, though you've never noticed." The implication hung in the night air between them. Natalie studied his face in the moonlight, seeing for the first time the emotion he usually kept carefully masked. "Nicolas," she said softly. "I had no idea." "How could you? You've been looking elsewhere since the moment the Emperor singled you out for those translation projects." There was no bitterness in his voice, only resignation. "I'm not telling you this to complicate your decision. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that there are other possibilities for your future." "What possibilities?" "Returning to England as a diplomatic attache's spinster daughter? Or perhaps marrying some minor lord who values my languages more than my company? What about marrying someone who has watched you decline 3 perfectly respectable proposals because your heart was already given elsewhere?" He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Someone who admires your intelligence and courage. Someone who wants to build a life with you, not hide you away as a secret indulgence." Natalie's breath caught. "You can't mean I do." He stopped just short of touching her. "I'm not asking for an answer now. I know your heart is conflicted. But before you decide to meet the Emperor at the Kotsura Villa in 2 days' time, consider that there might be a future where you don't have to live in shadows." Her shock must have shown plainly on her face. "Yes, I know about the invitation," he admitted. "Imperial messengers talk, especially when plied with sake by seemingly sympathetic British diplomats. You had no right, perhaps not. But I couldn't stand by and watch you walk into this situation without knowing the full consequences." His eyes held hers. "Or without knowing that there's someone who would cherish you openly, without shame or secrecy." Without waiting for her response, he bowed slightly and walked back toward the embassy, leaving Natalie alone with the moonlight, the Emperor's journal, and a decision that seemed to grow more impossible by the hour. The following day passed in a haze of routine duties and internal debate. By evening, Natalie had reached no resolution. She sat at her writing desk, pen poised over paper, attempting to craft a response to the Emperor, whether acceptance or refusal, she still couldn't decide. A knock at her door revealed her father, his expression grave. "May I come in?" She gestured to a chair, noting the official-looking document in his hand. "What's that?" "A formal invitation for you to join Empress Mosoko's literary circle." He placed the document on her desk. "Delivered personally by an imperial messenger, with great ceremony." Natalie's pulse quickened as she scanned the elaborate calligraphy. The invitation was genuine and unprecedented. Foreign women were rarely invited into the Empress's inner circle. "This is Quite an honor, she said carefully. It's quite a complication, her father countered. The Empress requesting your presence regularly at court, just as I've arranged your return to England. Perhaps my departure could be delayed. Ambassador Greyson sighed heavily. Natalie, do you take me for a fool? Father, the Emperor visits you privately at garden receptions. Sends gifts without formal occasion. And now, immediately after his marriage, his new wife suddenly develops an interest in including you in her literary gatherings. He shook his head. These are not coincidences. Natalie kept her expression neutral with effort. If you're suggesting something improper, I'm suggesting that you've become entangled in imperial court politics that could damage both your reputation and British interests in Japan. He leaned forward, his tone softening. My dear girl, I've indulged your independence more than most fathers would. I've supported your intellectual pursuits, your cultural immersion. But I cannot, will not, allow you to become an imperial concubine, no matter how poetically the arrangement might be phrased. The blunt assessment stripped away pretense. How did you? I've been a diplomat for 30 years. Court intrigues follow similar patterns worldwide. He reached across the desk to take her hand. The Emperor may genuinely care for you. I don't doubt your connection is authentic. But the life he offers isn't one of partnership or equality. It's one of secrecy, shadows, and eventual heartbreak when political necessity demands he set you aside. Tears threatened, but Natalie blinked them back. You don't understand what's between us. I understand that you deserve more than stolen moments and hidden correspondence. Her father squeezed her hand gently. Lord Jameson has spoken to me. Surprise replaced her defensive posture. About what? His intentions toward you. His wish to court you properly upon our return to England. The ambassador smiled slightly. He's a good man, Natalie. Honorable. Intelligent. And unlike the Emperor, he can offer you a life lived in daylight. That night, sleep eluded Natalie entirely. She paced her room, alternately reading the Emperor's poems and the Empress's invitation, weighing choices that felt equally impossible. By dawn, she had made her decision. She wrote 2 letters, one to the Emperor and one to Nicolas. The first she sealed with wax, the second she left unsealed, still uncertain of its contents. The day passed in a fog of preparations. She instructed her lady's maid to pack her trunks for departure to England, raising questions she deflected with practiced ease. By evening, tension had wound her nerves so tight she could barely maintain conversation at dinner. As midnight approached, Natalie changed into a simple dark kimono, one that would attract less attention than Western dress if she were seen. The embassy was quiet as she slipped through the corridors and out a side entrance where a hired jinrikisha waited as arranged. The journey to the Kotsura imperial villa took nearly an hour, the wheels of the hand-pulled cart making little noise on the packed dirt roads. When they arrived at the perimeter, Natalie paid the driver generously and instructed him not to wait. The villa's extensive gardens lay silent under the harvest moon, security focused primarily on the main buildings rather than the outlying pavilions. Following the Emperor's instructions, she made her way to the Eastern Garden Pavilion, a small structure overlooking a perfectly arranged landscape of stone, water, and carefully pruned pines. The door was unlocked, as promised. Inside, a single lamp burned, casting soft light over the tatami floors. The Emperor was not yet there. Natalie knelt beside a low table where tea things had been arranged, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain anyone passing would hear it. From her obi, she withdrew the letter she had written to the Emperor and placed it on the table beside the teapot. Minutes passed like hours as she waited, rehearsing what she would say when he arrived. The sound of footsteps on the garden path sent her pulse racing, but when the door slid open, it was not the Emperor who entered. I hoped you wouldn't come, Nicolas said quietly, his face half in shadow. Natalie rose abruptly. How did you find me? I followed you from the embassy. He remained in the doorway. Don't worry, no one else knows you're here. You had no right to interfere. Perhaps not. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. But I couldn't let you make this choice without speaking to you one last time. There's nothing more to say. She gestured to the letter on the table. I've made my decision. Nicolas glanced at the sealed letter, then back at her. And what decision is that? Before she could answer, voices approached from outside, not the Emperor alone, but accompanied by several others. Nicolas quickly extinguished the lamp and pulled Natalie into the shadows at the far side of the pavilion. Imperial guards, he whispered, his arm protectively around her waist. Something's wrong. The door slid open again. 2 guards entered first, surveying the room with practiced efficiency. Behind them came not the Emperor but a court official Natalie recognized as Baron Hayashi, one of the Emperor's closest advisors. The Countess is not here, one guard reported. Baron Hayashi stepped further into the pavilion, his gaze sweeping the shadows where Natalie and Nicolas stood concealed behind a decorative screen. For a terrifying moment, she thought they had been discovered, but the Baron's attention was drawn to the letter on the table. She has been here, he observed, picking up the sealed letter. This bears her family crest. Should we search the gardens? The senior guard asked. No. Her absence spares us considerable difficulty. The Baron tucked the letter into his robes. The Emperor will not be coming tonight in any case. Has His Majesty been informed of the British ambassador's concerns? The Emperor has been made aware that certain rumours have reached diplomatic circles. He has wisely chosen to prioritize imperial stability over personal indulgence. Baron Hayashi moved toward the door. The Countess's imminent departure for England resolves the matter neatly. After they left, Natalie remained frozen in place, Nicolas's arm still around her. They knew, she whispered. My father went to the imperial court. Not your father. Nicolas guided her to sit on a cushion. The Empress's family. They've been watching you for months. Your father received a private message today from the Imperial Household Ministry suggesting that your continued presence in Japan could create complications. And the Emperor? Did he know I would be intercepted? I don't know. Nicolas knelt beside her. But he chose not to come, Natalie. Whatever his feelings, when faced with potential scandal, he chose his position over you. The truth of it settled like a weight upon her chest. As he always would have, in the end. They sat in silence for several minutes, the moonlight streaming through paper windows creating patterns across the tatami. What did your letter say? Nicolas finally asked. Natalie looked up at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time, the genuine concern in his eyes, the quiet strength in his bearing. It said goodbye. His surprise was evident. You weren't planning to accept his proposal. I came to tell him in person that I couldn't live a life of shadows, no matter how beautiful the poems that described it. She gave a small, sad smile. It seems fate made the decision simpler for both of us. Nicolas took her hand carefully, as if expecting her to pull away. When she didn't, he asked, and what of the other letter? The one you wrote to me. How did you know about that? Your maid mentioned you had been writing letters all day. I assumed one might be for me. Natalie studied their joined hands. That letter was harder to write. I'm still not certain of its contents. Perhaps you could tell me instead. She met his gaze steadily. It said that I've been blind to what was before me. That while I was lost in an impossible dream, I fail to see a possible future." Her voice softened. "It asked if your offer might still stand, even knowing my heart has been elsewhere." Nicolas brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "My offer stands. And hearts can find new homes, given time and care. I cannot promise immediate love," she warned. "I don't ask for that. Only for the chance to earn it, day by day, in the light rather than in shadows." As they made their way back through the moonlit gardens, Natalie felt lighter than she had in months. The ache of what might have been remained, but alongside it grew the tentative hope of what could be. 1 week later, as their ship departed Yokohama harbor, Natalie stood at the rail watching Japan recede into the distance. Nicolas joined her, offering silent companionship as she said her private farewells to the land that had claimed her heart. "A messenger brought this just before we boarded," he said, handing her a small package. "I've already checked, it's only a book." Inside was a volume of classical Japanese poetry, its cover decorated with intertwined cherry blossoms and chrysanthemums. A slip of paper marked a particular poem, "The Blossom That Falls Is Not Truly Lost. For in distant soil new flowers may grow." Beneath, in the Emperor's handwriting, I read your letter. "You chose wisely. May your garden flourish in English soil." "Are you all right?" Nicolas asked, noting her expression. Natalie closed the book and turned toward the open sea, where England and a different future awaited. "I will be," she said, and for the first time in many months, she believed it. She slipped her hand into Nicolas's, and together they watched Japan fade into the horizon, an ending, yes, but also, perhaps, the beginning of something true and lasting, built not on secret poems and midnight meetings, but on understanding, respect, and the promise of love that could grow in daylight.